I'm Miss Fran. This is Reed Memorial Library, and I want to welcome you to Preschool Storytime. Would you sing with me as we do our opening song? If you'd like to read a book, clap your hands. If you'd like to read a book, clap your hands. If you'd like to read a book, come on close and take a look. If you'd like to read a book, clap your hands. Okay, here's a hint on something we're going to be reading about. If you'd like to read a book, make yourself really big. Can you get really big? If you'd like to read a book, make yourself really big. If you'd like to read a book, come on close and take a look. If you'd like to read a book, make yourself really big. Good job. Okay, here's another hint. If you'd like to read a book, make yourself really small. How small can you get? If you'd like to read a book, make yourself really small. If you'd like to read a book, come on close and take a look. If you'd like to read a book, make yourself really small. Good job. I can see you making yourself so teeny. All right. Well, we've been talking about small creatures a lot over the last few weeks in story time. Can you tell what kind of a small creature there is on this book? That's right. It's a mouse. And we've been talking about small creatures that are getting ready for winter, because the season that we're in right now is called autumn or fall. So this is a book called Such a Little Mouse. It's by Alice Schertle, and she's the same lady who wrote the books about the little blue truck, which I really like. But this one is Such a Little Mouse, and it talks about some things that happen as the mouse goes through the seasons. Such a little mouse. See, the little mouse has part of a nut in its mouth. What's he doing? Way out in the wide world, there is a meadow. And in the middle of the meadow, under a clump of dandelions, there is a hole. Can you find the hole in the picture? There's a clump of dandelions, and look, little tiny hole. Who do you think lives in that hole? And way down deep in the hole lives a mouse. You were right. There's the hole. There's his little mailbox and his rug and a little button that he has up there that says, Home Sweet Hole. Such a little mouse with his smart gray coat, with his ears pink as petals, with 3 twitchety whiskers on each side of his nose. Every morning in the spring, 1, 2, 3, he pops out of his hole. Such a little mouse. Off he goes into the wide world. You see him here? He's looking up. What's that on the tree? Can you tell? A little squirrel. You see the little bird up here? He's looking at that wide world. He sees a snail climbing up a fern, and he watches the busy bees on the clover blossoms. Bzz, busy, busy, bzz, bzz, says the bees. Can you make the sound of a bee? Bzz, bzz. And he hears a woodpecker, rat-a-tat-tat. He's tapping and hammering at the tree. I had a woodpecker just like that in my yard this week. And that's exactly what he was doing. He was tapping and hammering at the tree and eating the little larvae that were in there, little bugs. The little mouse looks at himself in a puddle. Hello, self, he says. And when the day is done, he brings a little round seed home in his mouth. See him going down in the kitchen, going down the tunnel into the bedroom, going down more into the storage room. He packs it away in his storeroom, way down deep in his hole. It's springtime. There's not very much in that storage room. Every morning in summer, 1, 2, 3, he pops out of his hole. Such a little mouse. Off he goes into the wide world. See, something's happening here. Let's turn the page and see what it is. He watches the beavers working in the pond. The beaver's saying, hi. He visits a toad who lives under a flower pot. It's dark in here, says the little mouse. That's the way I like it, says the toad. He sees a prickly porcupine. And when the day is done, he brings a sprig of watercress home in his mouth. He packs it away in his storeroom, way down deep in his hole. There's a few more things in that storeroom now, isn't there? Every morning in autumn, which is another name for fall, 1, 2, 3, he pops out of his hole. Such a little mouse. Off he goes into the wide world. The wide world is starting to look a little bit different, isn't it? Is it the same color as it was in summer and in spring? Seems like the grass was green and the tree was green, but now it's yellow. And look, the leaves are starting to fall off. He tunnels under piles of leaves. Rustle, rustle, rustle go the leaves. He feels the autumn wind tickle his whiskers. Winter is coming, whispers the wind. He watches the geese fly overhead. Honk, honk, they cry. Winter is coming. Can you honk like a goose? Honk, honk. Winter is coming. He sees a line of tiny ants marching along. The little mouse puts his petal pink ear close to the ground. Winter is coming, say the tiny ant voices. And when the day is done, he carries an acorn home in his mouth. And he packs it away in his storeroom, way down deep in his hole. Look how many things he has saved aside in his storeroom now. One morning, when the little mouse pops out of his hole, it is winter. Does it look like a different color? It's not the yellow color like fall anymore, is it? It's white. Why do you think everything looks white in the winter? The grass and the flowers and the weeds are gone, and snow covers the meadow and the trees. Brrr, says the little mouse, and back he goes down into his warm hole. Look, all the leaves are gone off the trees, all the grass is gone. He makes a loaf of acorn bread. There he's mixing it, letting it rise, baking it in the oven. He makes seed and watercress soup, stirring it up and cooking it. And he snuggles up under a little moss blanket with a book of mouse tales. Such a little mouse, all snug and warm deep down in his hole until spring. There he is. He's peeking his eyes out. It's still white with snow, but look, he sees a little blade of grass coming up for spring. And the seasons will start all over again. So in our backyards, animals are getting ready for winter. That's what they do in autumn or fall time, which it is now. It's still warm. We're at the very end time of summer. But the animals know that there won't be nuts and other things that they need to eat. And they've got to store them away. In our backyard, I saw squirrels all week digging holes and planting nuts in them and covering them up with their little paws. And so they're going to have some food saved aside for this winter. So now we're going to do a finger play, and it's about 5 little mice. So you got to get your 5 little mice out. Here's mine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you get all your 5 fingers up there? Okay, and we're also going to need a kitty cat. Oh. Meow. He's a kitty cat who is sleek and fat. Meow. So here's how it goes. 5 little mice went out to play, gathering crumbs along the way. Let's hear them nibble. Along comes a kitty cat, sleek and fat. Meow. And 4 little mice go scampering back. Uh-oh, what happened to that one mouse? 4 little mice come out to play. Okay, you got your mice? Are they playing? Gathering crumbs along the way. Nibble. Along comes a kitty cat, sleek and fat. Meow. And 3 little mice go scampering back. Uh-oh. 3 little mice come out to play, gathering crumbs along the way. Along comes a kitty cat, sleek and fat. Meow. And 2 little mice go scampering back. Where do those mice keep going? 2 little mice come out to play, gathering crumbs along the way. Along comes a kitty cat, sleek and fat. Meow. Oh, only 1 little mouse goes scampering back. 1 little mouse comes out to one little mouse comes out to play, gathering crumbs along the way. Along comes a kitty cat, sleek and fat. Meow! And no little mice go scampering back. Where did they all go? Those 5 little mice are hidden away. They'll gather crumbs another day. They outfoxed that kitty cat, didn't they? They outsmarted him. Very good. All right, so we read a book about a really little tiny animal, a little mouse, and now we're going to read a book about a great big animal. Have you ever seen a rhinoceros at the zoo, a real one? Well, you'll have to listen to this book and see if you think this is a real rhinoceros or not. But this is called Rhinos Don't Eat Pancakes, and it's written by Anna Kemp. And if you look, here is a purple rhinoceros laying on the couch with a little girl eating pancakes. What is going to happen in this book, I wonder? I like the end papers. Can you see the little purple rhinos on the end paper? Rhinos don't eat pancakes. And there she is, flipping a pancake out of the pan right into the rhino's mouth. I guess maybe that rhino does. Do you ever get the feeling that your mom and dad aren't listening to a word you say? Mom and dads, they get very busy. So they might say things like, "Oh, that's nice, dear," or "Tell your granny," or "Can't you see I'm on the phone?" So when one day Daisy had something really important to say, guess what? Nobody listened. So this is what happened. Daisy was eating her breakfast when a big purple rhino strolled into the kitchen. That's right, a big purple rhino. It was as big as a bus and as purple as a plum. She looks rather surprised. It was also hungry, so it took a chomp of Daisy's pancake and went upstairs. "Mom, Mom," Daisy called. "There's a big—" "Tell your dad," said Mom. "He'll catch it in a mug and throw it out the window." "Dad, Dad," said Daisy. There's a huge—" "Shh," said Dad. The spider can wait. Looks like he's got a bit of laundry there. It's not a spider, Daisy shouted. It's a big purple rhinoceros. But as usual, nobody listened. Meanwhile, the Rhino made himself right at home. Daisy saw him in the hall. He's got a hat and a scarf on, and she glimpsed him in the yard between the laundry. She spied him in the bathroom. Oh, close the door. But every time she tried to tell her parents, they'd say, "Shh, Daisy, can't you see we're busy?" Daisy's parents were busy all week, so Daisy began to talk to the Rhino instead. Soon, they became good friends. They played ring toss. Here she's tossing it onto his little horn. They made pizza together. And the Rhino tickled Daisy until she thought she'd burst. But Daisy's parents didn't notice. Until the pancakes ran out. "Who ate all the pancakes?" yelled Dad, looking straight at Daisy. "It was the Rhino," she said. "Rhinos don't eat pancakes," said Dad. "This one does," cried Daisy. "I saw him in the kitchen." "A rhino?" said Mom. "In the kitchen?" said Dad. "Yes," said Daisy, "exactly." Mom and Dad roared with laughter. "Ha ha, what next?" they hooted. "A shark in the toilet? A polar bear in the fridge?" "There he is! Look!" Daisy yelled. But Mom and Dad were so busy laughing, they didn't even notice. "Come on, Rhino," said Daisy. "I've had enough of this." The Rhino tickled Daisy with his horn, but she was far too glum to giggle. "Mom and Dad never listen," she sighed. "They're always a million miles away." The Rhino sighed deeply through his big purple nostrils. "I'm sorry," said Daisy. "Your family is a million miles away too, isn't it?" The Rhino nodded, and a lilac tear rolled down his cheek. Poor Rhino. That night, Daisy sat up thinking of ways to get the Rhino back home to his family. Here's all of her ideas. He was too heavy for a hot air balloon. Look, his feet broke right through the basket. And he was too big for Daisy's rubber dinghy. Oh no, he'll never fit, and he already broke one of the oars. She thought about lending him her bike, but the helmet would never fit. And look how big he is for that little tiny bike. The next morning, Mom and Dad had a surprise. "We're taking you to the zoo," said Mom, "so you can see a real rhino." "What do you think of that?" Dad grinned. Well, Daisy thought it was a stupid idea when there was already a perfectly good rhino sitting on the sofa. But she didn't say so. What was the point? Nobody would listen. Here they are at the zoo. At the zoo, Daisy saw yellow giraffes, bright red parrots, orange and black tigers, and grass green snakes. But she couldn't help thinking about her poor purple rhino. "Hurry up, Daisy," said Mom. "The rhinos are this way." See the little sign that says "This way to the rhinos"? But what was this? It's a big sign that says "Missing. Big purple rhino. Likes pancakes. If found, please call the zoo." Look at Dad and Mom's face. "Cripes," gasped Mom. "Well, that explains the pancakes," gasped Dad. Mom, Dad, and Daisy rushed back home, and guess what they saw when they got there? Can you guess what they saw? What do you think? That's right, the biggest purplest rhinoceros in town. What did I tell you? Daisy said, grinning from ear to ear. What is that rhino doing? Laying on the couch, using the remote to watch TV and eating pancakes. I'm calling the zoo, said Mom. The rhino looked startled. No, said Daisy, not the zoo. He needs to get back to his family. They are 1,000,000 miles away. Well, we better get a move on, said Dad. The next flight to 1,000,000 miles away leaves this afternoon. The rhino packed his suitcase while Daisy found his hat. Then they all pushed his big purple bottom into the back of the car. That looks like an impossible task. And drove to the airport. I'll miss you, said Daisy as the rhino boarded the plane. The rhino gave her a big purple hug. He would miss her too. Back at home, Daisy began to feel lonely again. Who would listen to her now? But little did she realize that everything was about to change. Tell us about the rhino, Daisy said, Mom. Yes, said Dad. Tell us about that big purple pancake-eating rhino. You can see the couch is kind of ruined on that one end where the rhino was sitting. So Daisy told them about the ring toss and the pizza and the tickles. And guess what? They listened and listened until she had completely run out of words. It was wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Asked Mom as she tucked Daisy into bed that night. Daisy looked out onto the landing. No, that's all for now, said Daisy, smiling. Night, night. Can you look out on the landing? Can you see what's out there? The pink polar bear would have to wait till tomorrow. Looks like a whole zoo is coming to her house, doesn't it? Sometimes it's easy to get too busy to listen, but it's important, isn't it, to listen when people are telling us things, even things that sound kind of fantastical, like a purple rhino. All right, so that was a story about a very, very large animal. So I have an action poem that we're going to do about a very big creature called a rhinoceros. Can you stand up? You have to make yourself really big again, because this is about a rhinoceros. Do the motions with me, okay? A rhinoceros. A rhinoceros sometimes makes a dreadful fuss. He has a big horn on his nose. He snorts and rumbles as he goes. He's very long and very wide, and he has a really wrinkled hide. He has big hoofs on his 4 feet. We feed him grass and hay to eat. A rhinoceros is surely not a pet for us. Let's do it one more time, okay? Make yourself really big. A rhinoceros. Sometimes he makes a dreadful fuss. He has a big horn on his nose. He snorts and rumbles as he goes. He's very long and very wide and has really, really wrinkled hide. He has big hoofs on his 4 feet. We feed him grass and hay to eat, and sometimes pancakes. A rhinoceros is surely not a pet for us. Do you think that that purple rhinoceros made a very good pet for Daisy? Seems like he was a good friend for her, but he really wanted to go home 1,000,000 miles away, didn't he? So how many of you have actually been to the zoo to see a rhinoceros? Raise your hand if you've been there. Well, I love to look at books that tell about animals that I don't see because there's no rhinoceroses that live out in the wild in the United States of America unless they're in a zoo. So rhinoceroses usually live in Africa. So this book is called Rhinoceros, and it's by Grace Hansen, and we're going to see some actual photos of rhinoceroses. You can see the great big horn and the wrinkly skin. They're very large. There's a photo of our rhino on a white background. Look at his tiny little eye. There's our table of contents. It's going to tell us about many things. A rhinoceros lives in Africa. They are found in grasslands. See all the grass, the dried grass? What other animals can you see in the picture? Can you see what those are? Yeah, giraffes. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 giraffes in that picture. And look, a couple of them are small, like maybe they're young ones. Black rhinos mainly live in eastern Africa. They spend most of their days near watering holes. They stay cool by lounging in the shade. There's a rhino laying on the ground, kind of lounging around because it's pretty hot in Africa. Black rhinos are actually gray. What is that rhino doing in that picture? Yeah, he's laying on his back, but what else? Look at what he's rolling in something. Mud. Yes, they roll in mud to protect their skin. It makes them look darker than they are. That mud dries on their skin and it acts sort of like sunscreen, and it keeps the bugs from biting them too. Black rhinos weigh up to 3,000 pounds. That's more than your car. And they are about 5.5 feet tall, which is as tall as I am. And they are between 10 and 13 feet long. They are very long and very wide, aren't they? You see the horn? Black rhinos have 2 horns. The front horn is longer than the back one. Rhinos use their horns for protection. In the book about rhinos don't eat pancakes, the rhino used his horn to tickle Daisy. But in real life, the rhinos use the horn to maybe poke something to keep it away from them, to protect themselves. Excuse me. Rhinos enjoy lazy days. They are much more active at night. They search for their favorite plants to eat. See, there he's eating some grass. Look how wide he is. That's a big animal. A black rhino uses its upper lip to grasp and pull leaves from plants. Sometimes it will eat the entire plant, not just the leaves. Doesn't he seem like he has a tiny eye for as big as his head is? It's a very large head. Baby rhinos, aww. The female rhinos usually have 1 baby at a time. Baby rhinos weigh between 55 and 100 pounds. That is a pretty big baby. That's about the same size as an elephant baby. Baby rhinos drink their mother's milk for about 1.5 years. And at 2 weeks old, baby rhinos also can eat leaves. They stay with their mothers for 2 or 3 years. I want you to see the horn on that rhino. My goodness, that's a really big, long horn. Here's a couple of things that I will tell you that it says with more interesting facts. If the rhinoceros's horn happens to break, they can regrow. It can grow again because that's an important thing for them to have. They can live up to 50 years in the wild, and they spend a lot of their lives alone, but the females still make very good mothers because they are very protective of their babies. I'm glad there's not a rhino in my kitchen, but I am really glad that there are rhinos in the world because they're so interesting. Excuse me. So I wanted to show you what is in your bag for your craft today. I'm going to dump some of it out. Mrs. Shelley helped me put this together, and she had some good ideas. She said, let's make a craft that's a paper bag puppet. And she said, imagine that an animal came to your house. What kind of an animal would you like it to be? And one of the little girls at Storytime said she would like it to be a monster. Well, what would you like? You can make it any color you'd like. She put in all kinds of crazy eyes that you can choose from. She's got some, you can use the leaves, little puff balls or cotton balls, colored paper that you can use as circles or you can cut it. You can use your own crayons, your own markers, scissors, whatever you need, and you can decorate this little paper bag so it'd be, hello, I am an animal that's come to stay at your house. What would you like me to look like? You can make it just like you'd like it to look like. And we also included in the kit a purple rhino puppet. It's a little stick puppet. You can move his legs. You can make him sit down on your couch. Oh, hello. And there's also a few pancakes in there in case your purple rhino happens to like pancakes like the one in the story did. So I hope you have fun making your own animal that you'd like to have visit your house as a puppet and playing with your purple rhino. And so I wanted to also mention to you that next week there won't be any preschool story time on Tuesday. We skip a week and then we have 4 more sessions, 4 more weeks of preschool story time. So make sure you're signed up, and I'll see you then a week after next. All right, would you help me sing goodbye? Let's sing our goodbye song because I am really glad you came today. I'm glad you came today. I'm glad you came today. I hope that you will come again. I'm glad you came today. Sing with me, okay? I'm glad you came today. I'm glad you came today. I hope that you will come again. I'm glad you came today. See you next time.